Greetings, Dr. Beckett. Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Theorizing that one could time travel within his own lifetime, Dr. Sam Beckett stepped into the Quantum Leap Accelerator and vanished. He awoke to find himself trapped in the past, facing mirror images that were not his own, and driven by an unknown force to change history for the better. His only guide on this journey is Al, an observer from his own time, who appears in the form of a hologram that only Sam can see and hear. And so Dr. Beckett finds himself leaping from life to life, striving to put right what once went wrong, and hoping each time that his next leap will be the leap home.
You are listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast. This is episode 142, Odyssey.
Welcome to the Quantum Leap Podcast, everyone. I'm Christopher DeFilippis.
I'm Allison Pregler.
And I'm Matt Dale.
And welcome back, one and all, to the latest meeting of the Quantum Leap Podcast Book Club. Today, we will be discussing Book 10 in the novel series, Odyssey, by Barbara Walton. Who wants to do the honors of reading the cover blurb for Odyssey to refresh everybody's memory? Oh, it's going to be me.
I got it ready. No, I got it. I have the book right next to me.
I'm not prepared for it this time.
All right, here, I got it. Will a leaper learn his lessons before it's too late? In 1983, in a small town in upstate New York, Sam Beckett has a problem. He's leaped into a brilliant but troubled boy named Sean O'Connor, who's part of a gifted students program called Olympics of the Mind. The program is about to be cancelled, and if it is, Ziggy says terrible things will happen to Sean and his friends as they grow up. But how can a 12-year-old boy put right what is about to go wrong? In 1999, in the center of the secret project known as Quantum Leap, Al Calavici has an even bigger problem. The real Sean O'Connor is in detention in the waiting room, and he's determined to escape. Quantum Leap Odyssey, all new adventure, first time in print. Another kind of lie, isn't it? all these blurbs have slight lies in the pitches.
Isn't that the point of cover blurbs, though? I mean, don't they always twist the truth a little bit in the interest of some, whatever the print version of clickbait is?
I guess it's kind of the equivalent of when you go in media res, you know, and you start and then it's like, oh, how did we get here? And then...
I hate that. That's so lazy. 24 hours earlier.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I couldn't think of a way to do a compelling beginning to the episode, so let me go to the high point from Act 3, spoil that for you, and then tell you how we got there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's me. I bet you're wondering how I got in this situation. Well, let me tell you. There's a brief scene where Sean gets out of the waiting room, which is kind of interesting, but it's not really the point of the book. It's not really about that.
You need to sell these things. And, you know, the person in charge of writing the back cover blurb, that's their job. So I guess they have.
Sure.
I even tried out for that job at a publisher once, and they never called me back.
Ooh.
They never gave me the time of day.
Like, you don't know how to go clickbaity enough.
I guess not. Well, and they pulled a dirty trick on me because I went in and they're just like, so what do you like to read? And I said, well, you know, I'm a science fiction author and I love science fiction and fantasy and genre stuff would be great. And they gave me a fucking romance novel to write a blurb for. And I was like, you sons of bitches.
Well, that was clever. The test, though. You can't just be things you're interested in.
And apparently I failed it spectacularly because here I am on mic instead of some big mogul editor out in New York City. So
are editors the ones that write the blurbs?
No, but have you ever seen the movie Coming to America?
Could have been the start of something.
Oh, I see, yeah.
I'm like Louis Anderson, see?
You know, I started on cleanup just like you guys. But now, see, I'm washing lettuce. Soon I'll be on fries, then the grill. A year or two, I make assistant manager. And that's where the big bucks start rolling in.
Why don't you go and try out somewhere else and just walk in there and say, yeah, I'm a big fan of romance. And Let's hope they do the same thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, had I known like an idiot, I would have been like, oh, I love Regency romance, whatever the fuck that is. And, and I've dropped 2 F-bombs now, so maybe I'm more bitter about this distant memory than I had. See, this book is about, coming of age, and it's bringing up all stuff from when we were coming of age. Ooh.
Do you need to lie down on a Perspex table and talk to Al about this?
I didn't know I needed to talk to somebody about it, but apparently I do. Barbara Walton, you're so sneaky. You're so sly. You got into my headspace.
I will say that your summaries of the episodes of the podcast are always very good, so just saying, you could have been good at that job in another life.
I feel like you're twisting the knife just a little bit more. Thank you very much.
They didn't know what they lost.
We acknowledge you're talented. We just don't want you.
I don't know. You might be making the same amount of bucks podcasting as you would in the back blurbs.
But is he happy, Allison? Is he happy?
It's drudgery doing this job.
I just wouldn't have a microphone because I wouldn't be able to afford it if I was making the same money as I make podcasting, which is to say...
Well, we're able to afford Matt a microphone, so...
Yeah, no. Now that we... But yeah, getting that first microphone would have been a heavy lift. I would have had to donate some blood or something. Maybe sell off some... I could make some macrame. Anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know how to macrame. I'd have to teach myself to macrame, but I think we're getting off topic here. Hey, Odyssey.
Do we want to talk about this book?
You know what? That's a good question. I am very curious to know what you guys thought of this book because, as usual, my life is so hectic. I read it today. I literally just finished it 15 minutes before we got on mic. So it is very fresh in my mind, but I don't think this one's come up in any of our errant discussions about the novels. And I'm super excited to hear what you guys have to say about it. So, why don't we do initial impressions? AP, what did you think of Odyssey?
I give Odyssey a solid okay. If this was an episode of the show, it would be one I wouldn't really think of too often. But I do think it was written pretty well. I did like the flow of it and the characterization. It just didn't really grab me that much. The only thing I was kind of mad about, I guess, is that at the beginning, there was a bunch of quotes of other books, and I was having flashbacks to The Wall and just quotes from military manuals. So I just didn't read it. Did I miss anything important in that part?
No, it's much more, I think, about like education and sort of what it means to educate different people and how different people absorb education, things like that. But this, right. Because that was one of the main themes of this book was education. But Matt, what were your initial impressions?
I'm not a big fan of the autobiography genre. And particularly when it's about somebody I've never heard of called Barbara Walton. I'm sure her childhood was very interesting to her. And actually, she got a pretty good book out of it. Touch self-indulgent, maybe? But it has its moments.
All right. I think that those are both very fair points. It did feel very autobiographical to me as well when I was reading it. But for all that... I enjoyed this book much more than I remembered enjoying it the first time, and I think that has to do with Barbara's command of the characters and the fact that she's just a pretty good writer. So I felt like this book had captured Sam and Al very well, in my estimation.
Yeah, I think the dialogue flowed really nicely.
Yeah, that's what I want to say. There was an ease of dialogue. There was an ease of narrative. It was just a well-written book, well-put-together book. So I, like you guys, I was just like, do I want to read about a bunch of gifted kids? I mean, this is essentially a young adult novel set in the Quantum Leap universe. And I was kind of dreading it. But the second I got to know Sean a little bit in the waiting room, I really enjoyed his character. And then all of the gifted kids stood out to me with specific strengths. So if we maybe should, I know the cover blurb is a little bit condensed, but in essence, this book is about that gifted program that Sean's a part of. And while they're not focusing on Sean in the waiting room with Al, they're focusing on Sam with all the rest of the kids that are in the program. And the kids have actually, pretty substantial roles. It's very fleshed out. So we get to know a little bit about each kid. We get to know about their home lives. We get to know their personalities. And I think they all stand out as individuals. So I wasn't expecting to enjoy that part of the story. I was expecting to get through that part of the story. And in my opinion, that became much more engaging than I had anticipated or that I had remembered. So I was curious to know what you thought of that. I have some more thoughts on that, but I want to know if you guys had the same sort of dread, the same sort of experience. Where do you stand on that part of it?
It's funny because I remember that when I first read this a few years back, just going into it blind, I really liked it. And I think, I don't know what it was that changed this time. I guess I had the exact opposite experience of you, Chris. I went into this thinking, I remember this being a good book. And then I just couldn't find that much to grab onto. And you're right, it's a young adult book. And maybe just this week I wasn't in the young adult frame of mind. I can't critique Barbara Walton too much for what she was trying to do and what she was trying to achieve, because she did achieve that well.
Yeah, I think I felt the length of this novel because it just wasn't a story I was very interested in. But I think it was written very well as a Quantum Leap story. It's the one, I think, out of all the ones that we've read so far that feels the most like a classic leap from the show. It feels like something you would have seen there. I feel like the stuff at the project was integrated really well with the stuff on the Leap. I liked the dialogue. I felt like it felt very true to the characters. I liked how the people at the project were used. I just didn't really care about the kids at all. when it got to the sections where it described each kid talking to their parent or guardian or whatever, or their home life, I skimmed it or didn't read it. I'm going to be honest. I didn't really feel like I missed too much. But I don't want that to be a knock on Barbara Walton. I think it's just personally, like, I said this before, there was 30 pages missing from my book because of a misprint. Once it gets to page 182, it suddenly becomes page 55 and then continues until 30 pages. And then somewhere in the book, I don't know what that nightmare, why they explained, or what they explained the nightmare as or whatever, but I don't know. I didn't really look at the digital copies that we have to see what happened in those 30 pages. And I wasn't too broken up about it.
I definitely want to pick up on the point that you just made, because I felt the same way about the fact that this felt a lot more like classic televised Quantum Leap. It's the first of the books, I think, that hasn't really made use of the printed word to be able to do big set pieces or multiple different locations. It just keeps it small and low budget feeling, despite the fact that it's a book, and it could go big. It doesn't. And I like it for that. And I definitely love the project stuff. Yeah, I was reminded a lot of, one of my favorite episodes is Return of the Evil Leaper, because of the stuff that Al's got in the waiting room. And this has very much shades of that.
Yeah, the stuff I cared most about in this one was Al and Sean. I didn't care that much about the Leap, to be honest. I feel like it was more about the Al and Sean scenes. But maybe that's because I paid more attention when I read those.
Yeah, and I'm going to say, Allison, I think that you did yourself a disservice, and I understand why you did it. I mean, if you're not interested, you're not interested. But I feel like, as a reader, I bring to a book a responsibility to at least give the author a chance with what it is they're trying to say or do, right? So sure. Even though I might have that initial barrier to entry where, do I want to get invested in these characters? It's just like, well, then if I don't try, why am I reading the book? And I realized, okay, I know why I'm reading this book. We're doing a podcast about it. But at the same time, I feel like it's even more important for me personally to try and invest myself in it.
I mean, I have read this book before.
Yeah, I know.
Just to clarify, I did read it the first time through. Outside of those 30 pages, I've never read. But that's not my fault.
I'll have to send you a copy. I'll send you those 30 pages.
Yeah, and we'll do mimeographs. We'll send you. They'll be in the mails shortly, and then we'll do an addendum to this pod. We'll do Odyssey B.
Yeah, and I'll be like, I love the book now. Actually, I'm making it seem like I hated it. I really didn't. I just I know what I'm interested in or what I'm not, and I've read this before, so. Yeah,
and I'm going to say it's fair enough, and in the sense that, I mean, that was all just flavor. That was all helping bring these kids to life as characters in their own right.
I read the Tina stuff. I read the Tina stuff.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I mean, well, let's talk about that right now, because that was the twist, right? One of the kids, just so you know, everybody out there listening, if you haven't read the book in a while, Sean's friends were Sarah Easton, who was a shy, dorky girl, Peter Pigeon Janowski, who was kind of the geeky kid who lived with his grandma, Johnny Mintz, who was actually cool with a cooler older brother, and Chrissy Martinez, who I knew from page 1, paragraph 1, was Tina. Christina Martinez, blah, blah, blah. Did you guys, when you read it the first way through, did you cotton to that right away like I did?
I don't think I did.
I feel like I did, but I don't remember. I certainly knew this time around, and I feel like when you have a twist in a story, you need to have it be still entertaining when you read it back, and I guess I was interested in what was going on in Tina's life, but I'm not really sure the story capitalized on it very much. Like, it's the very last paragraph, basically, where they say, like, oh, it was Tina all along. But it just kind of makes Al seem dumb, or the project seem dumb or incurious, that they never want to know who this girl is. Like, it could be important to the Leap, but they never really look into it that hard, so it doesn't, I don't know, it just wasn't a very interesting way to go about it. And I don't know, I didn't really want to see a bunch of scenes with Sam and an 11-year-old girlfriend. This was prevalent through this book. And, you know, the fact she wants to be more adult than she is, which is, it fits with Tina's character, but you are, like, reading scenes where a little girl is talking about, like, her boobs and stuff like that, and it's like, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, yes. I can't. It was so long ago that I read this the first time. I think I probably was surprised by the Tina revelation at the end. But to me, a twist has to be a shock for it to be worth it. Just saying, oh, this character is someone that we also kind of know from other expanded fiction. It wasn't jarring enough. It wasn't a twist. It was just a fact that came late. Nothing was. Nothing was changed by the fact that we knew it at the end of the book versus at the start, except that if we knew it at the start, we could have followed along and said, okay, this is the story of Tina. Just as one of the later books does the story of Gushi, although that, again, it holds it back a little bit, but at least not right till the end. There's no reason.
Yeah, I think, like, it would have been more interesting to have adult Tina involved in this story. This does tell us the most I think we ever find out about Tina, so there is interesting things about her character in this. Just to leave it as a twist, I'm not really sure if it was necessary, but, I mean, it was interesting to see, like, what was her childhood like, especially considering the show gave her, like, 2 lines and 1 appearance, so...
Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way in the sense that, Matt, it made no difference. The only reason I think that they wrote around it, that Barbara wrote around it completely, because then this would have been a complete Tina novel, and maybe that's not the books that she wanted to write. And maybe she was asked to put in some kind of twist, or maybe it was just a fun idea she had, but then she had to write around why Tina's not back at the project.
Yes.
Because it makes it very problematic. So they have the conceit in the beginning where Ziggy tells Tina that you have to go on vacation because you're going to forfeit that time. And Tina's like, I just took vacation 5 months ago. Why do I have to go again? No, Ziggy, I say you have to go. So in my head, even though they never address it in the book, Ziggy already figured out that this is Tina and that, it's...
Yeah, but Ziggy didn't do that with Al.
Exactly.
I mean, it's happened multiple times with Al at this point. So...
But it's the only thing that makes sense in the fiction of the book as presented to us. Ziggy obviously knows and is keeping it from them for some reason, maybe because it's too close to the reality that they all share. And again, it contradicts what we see in the series. Of course, we saw Bingo in the waiting room. There was no issue with that, right? And even young Sam was in the waiting room at some point, even though we never got to see him back there on screen. So why would it be such a big deal for a relatively minor player like Tina to be included in that legacy of characters leaping into each other's lives or something? And I guess, although Tina wouldn't have been back in, and Sam would have had to leapt into her, it was just an odd choice to me. So I really wanted to know what you guys thought about it.
It made Al look dumb as well when, fair enough, they managed to keep Al and Chrissy apart, but at one point Sam does say, "Do you know the name Chrissy Martinez? It sounds really familiar." And by this point in the show's history, in the fictional history, Al has admitted he is in love with Tina. He is in love with Tina.
Yeah.
And yet he doesn't know that Tina is short for Christina and she grew up around this time in this location. You would have thought something would have clicked.
Yeah, he says in this book, he's like, I love the wording of this, that he's afraid that another marriage is on the way. Like, he's like, oh no, I think we're going to get married. You know, like, so he's admitted that he's loved her. He's at this point where he thinks she might be wife number 6. And but then again, I don't know. He doesn't remember some ex-wives' names, so maybe he just doesn't commit his wives to memory.
Well, we did get all 5 named in this book.
Yeah, I forgot that they named the second wife in this one.
Yeah, and I think that that's just Barbara's invention, is it not?
Yeah, I don't think they ever named her in anything else.
Yeah, so it's Marta? Is that how you pronounce that? Martje.
Yeah, the Hungarian one.
Yeah.
Oh, did he? Okay.
I'm checking into this.
Yeah, so tell me, did he have a Hungarian wife?
He did. That's the only thing he ever said on the show about the second wife that was more specific. Was he just said, "What's her name?" The Hungarian one, and he never said her name.
Yeah.
And I realize now that I am Al Calavici, I have no idea who his wives are either. So I guess if Al doesn't know, why should I?
Yeah, the second wife. All right, everything we have about the second wife. We learned she was Hungarian in Leaping In Without a Net. We learned she had a reputation for throwing around small appliances in Moments to Live. And we learned her name in this book. Steve Slater in The Great Spontini reminds him of her divorce lawyer. All right, we're stretching now. And Al was still paying alimony to her by the time of sort of the 5th season. So yeah, so we don't know much, but we did learn her name in this novel. So thank you for giving us that, Barbara.
Yeah.
I mean, so while we're on this cul-de-sac, there's one bit of apocrypha, or even, just something that I gleaned from talking to Ginger and maybe even Barbara, because I did meet her at one of the E-Sleep conventions. Ruthie looms large in this book because it gives Al a connection to an as-to-fore unmentioned, I guess, stepson.
Yeah.
Which was Ruthie's son named Nate. And it was, for whatever reason, I don't know why, both Ginger and Barbara were under the impression that if any of Al's marriages would have worked post-Beth, they felt that Ruthie was the best candidate. There was just a closeness that they felt that Al had with Ruthie, and that's why Ruthie and her family were, really highlighted in this book. And it gave nice parallels to have Al go through something with Sean. But I was just curious to know if that is something that you guys had heard in other circles, because aside from the books, like I said, I barely remember anything about Al's wives if once you get past Beth. So I'm curious to know if that jives with your estimation of his relationship with Ruthie.
I mean, she's the one that he says in Another Mother that he never really realized how much family meant to him until her, which I guess this kind of adds to. So I guess if you're thinking about, like, before the timeline change at the end of the series, past Beth, I think Ruth was probably the one that seemed the most stable. That maybe he sabotaged himself. It says in this book that he cheated on her with one of her painting students. But yeah, I guess it's the one that seems, because they never said anything about her throwing appliances or anything. That's the second and fifth wife both did that. Sharon was the one that mothered him, the fourth wife. So yeah, I mean, I guess she's the one that probably has the most flattering depiction past Beth. Yeah, I feel like this whole adding Al's stepson is a huge bit of lore to add to his character in this book. Him having a stepson at one point, a stepson who later died, like that's kind of heavy.
I love it. It seems unlikely to have never come up before now.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the problem when you're playing in something that's had over 100 stories by this point. You can't add anything big in without it sticking out, but you've still got to be bold.
And I feel like that's a grand tradition, I guess, that has been in science fiction for quite a while. You know, Spock didn't have a brother until he did. Spock didn't have a sister until he did. So,
and those were both great storylines that everyone really loves.
I'm just saying there's precedence, so both before and after.
Yeah, classic characters, Cybok, everyone loved.
I love Cybok. That's a hill I'm going to die on.
I love how stupid Cybok is.
So Matthews, he's brainwashed because he gave Cybok his pain, so he doesn't know any better at this point.
I did. Cybok released me from my pain.
That's why he loves Star Trek V. He gave Cybok his pain, and all of a sudden Star Trek V was great.
Star Trek V is a good film. What are we on about?
Oh my god, I smell
this
fangent
is a topic
here.
For a fangent?
Yes, this is definitely a fangent. Put that in your calendar.
The Cybok special.
Yeah.
We're just going to talk about Star Trek V for a whole fangent.
Oh my
god. Up for that.
That'd be hilarious.
I'm going to call it the Cybok Slapdown or whatever wrestling.
The Cybok Spectacular.
Right.
So, Donna and Sam have got a cat called Fermi, or at least in Sam's imagination.
Oh my god, he's he remembers Donna in this book, and he imagines them being together in some other version of things where he didn't jump in time or whatever. He comes back, and they have a cat named Fermi, and guess where Donna is in this book? With her mother, gone. Yet another author is like, get out of here, Donna, writes her out. I love how many people are like, no thanks.
Yeah, I mean, she is mentioned, so at least she exists in this version of the timeline.
Well, she was mentioned in the last one too, but she wasn't married to Sam in that timeline.
She ain't gone. She's forgotten, but she ain't gone. Or she's gone, but she ain't forgotten.
She's with her mother. And my favorite excuse for writing someone out of a story is so-and-so is with their mother, because it's such a stereotype. It's a running joke I have in my Baywatch videos. Where's Hobie with his mother?
I feel like we're getting away from the whole Nate thing. I wanted to explore that a little bit more. Because I know it got dark, though, because what else are you going to do? Al, we know canonically he doesn't have a stepson, so if you're going to add that stepson, you're going to have to kill them off before the end of the story, you know? And in this case, he's just a memory.
Well, he could have been, once he got divorced from Ruth, not his stepson anymore, and maybe they grew apart, or maybe he just felt like he couldn't mend the relationship after he divorced from his mom because he cheated on her or whatever. They could have, but I don't mind they went this route with it. It's a heavy thing to add, but it added some interesting layers with Al and Sean, because you could tell he definitely was remembering Nate and thinking about this as he was speaking with him.
And that's where I want to commend Barbara the most for this, because we got such a nuanced and layered portrayal of Al here. He's still the Al we know and love, but we add this sort of somewhat tragic backstory, and then this budding relationship with this smart kid who's in the waiting room asking frank questions, who Al is the only one this kid trusts, or is willing to at least try to trust, because he's not a therapist. Kid's been going to therapy his whole life. He knows all their tricks. He knows all of their moves. So he really takes to Al because Al is different. Al seems to be straightforward. And this awakes in Al so many things that, as a man of a certain age, and I'm sort of creeping up towards that age, I'm not quite there yet, who never had kids. You think about what might have been. You think about where you are in your life, especially now if he's contemplating marrying Tina. Does he even want to be a father? Would he be any good at it? Is it something that's even feasible for him in this moment in his life, in this reality that he lives? And being with Sean really sparks a lot of this stuff. It dredges it up, and it makes him examine it in ways that I think were so compelling for the character, because it's just good. It's just good fiction. I really, really enjoyed that part of the book. If you can't tell, I don't know if I'm going overboard into gushing here, but it was just such an interesting wrinkle, you know?
Oh, it's great.
Yeah.
To me, it gives Al more depth. This is the kind of thing where, we have with, I know I've said it before, and I think I even said it in the Disco Inferno episode, but with Pulitzer, that story enhanced every other Quantum Leap story I watch from now on, because it gave a great background for Al, and it gave some compelling stuff, so I don't see his Vietnam stuff the same. Now I see it through the lens of Pulitzer as well. To me, that's all part of the universe. I feel like this could be that too, because I just find it interesting.
Yeah, if you think about when Al was talking about he didn't think family was important until Ruth, until then, and you consider this story canon, it does add more to that. The fact that, it wasn't just extended family, it was a stepson that he really cared about. In this book, he has a handheld game that belonged to Nate that he kept because he was going to fix it for him, but he never did fix it, and then Nate died. And so he gives this game to Sean to fix up, and that's something that's meaningful for him because, that's something that even though Sean can't take it with him, he could ruin it, something else could happen, but he gives him something that really means something to him.
Yeah. I felt the fact that Sean really couldn't fix it because it was just warped and broken. I don't know if that strayed into a little bit of heavy-handed allegory for me. I mean, it's like, oh, see, you get it? You get it? I mean, I don't know. That's one of the parts that I felt was just a tiny bit clunky, but it still works. I liked what they got out of that and the conversations that we had surrounding that scene. I just felt like the irreparable part of Al's past. Okay, Sean can't really fix it, but at least he's making Al acknowledge it, right? So it was just that concrete symbol, I guess you needed to say, get it, So, okay, I got it. I like it. So I don't know why I have I guess maybe, it just could have been a little bit more subtle. That's all. A little bonk bonk on the head to quote mission log.
No, I thought it was fine. I didn't think it was overly whatever. But I like that Sean also reminded him of him a little bit too. Not just Nate, but reminded him of him. He and Ruth grew up together, apparently, in Chicago, I think is what it says.
Yeah.
And so...
Also new.
Yeah, they grew up together, which adds a lot more depth to their story. And it was them and a bunch of other kids. And a bunch of them did not get help. So he relates to Sean, he relates to all the other kids on the Leap as well, because he wants to see better things happen for them.
And it was a wonderful way, I think, that Barbara filled in Al's backstory about how he stopped his wanderings, how he finally started on the road towards the Al that we know.
He ran away from the orphanage at 15, and then he saw a World War II movie with John Wayne. And John Wayne was in the Navy, so in the movie, and so he decided he was going to join the Navy, but he was underage, and the recruiter helped him with his education.
And I feel like that was one of the sort of defining themes of the book that Barbara set out, because we have a very definite scene with Tina where she says, this is the demarcation point from everything I was with all this, her, and they framed it in terms of her parents' divorce and her accepting the fact that that past is gone. But she decides very definitively that no matter what came before, at this point now, this is where the future begins. This is where I become who I become. I don't know what that's going to be yet, but this is the point. And I feel like we got that part with Al too, with the Navy recruiter. And I felt it was a nice way to jive the themes of the two stories together. So especially since it's Tina. I mean, creepy 11-year-old Tina, but still. There's some parallel there. So, I mean, that being said, I guess that gets us back to some of the kids' stuff. And Allison, I know that it's not something you were keen on revisiting and you skimmed over, but I got to be honest with you. When I think maybe it's because I recently, for one of my first podcasts, I reread It, which was about a bunch of kids, the Losers Club, and Stranger Things popped into my head. So once
those are both very good.
We got this ensemble of kids. I sort of got that vibe.
It has nothing to do with, I don't care about kids. I just, this particular story. I
know.
Feel like revisiting.
But I guess I'm relating why I got more engaged than I thought I would in the beginning, because I've been primed over the last, my recent history with media and stuff, both books and TV, for stories that involve a group of kids. So it kind of felt that way to me. And I think when I first read it, that was not a dynamic that I had appreciated as much or at all, because growing up with 80s movies, I guess, what do you got? The Goonies? And this ain't no Goonies, And it felt more teen and more angsty and more Breakfast Clubby, And it still is that way. There's still plenty of teen angst to be had here. But I don't know. I have a different headspace about it now, and I got a little bit more excited. Of course, they didn't go on any grand adventure or hop dimensions to the underground or the underneath, the upside down, right? The upside down. So Unfortunately.
This is more like one of those inspiring, like, underprivileged group of youth that meets a teach that turns it all around, but in reverse, right? Like, so
Yes.
like they're all gifted kids, it's all going good, but they got to stop them from going down the bad path.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, it is interesting, you know, it's not going down that route of, like, you know, everyone's a gangster, or they're going like, oh, yo, teach, and throwing spitballs or whatever. Like, they are a good group of kids that just go down this bad path because they're not nurtured. Like, they're not educated in a way that, or given things that interest them in ways that keep them stimulated, that keep them wanting to learn and grow. And, I was surprised that they didn't use more of Sam's youth in this story as someone who was insanely smart and grew up in a small town that can't have had that many, like, great gifted programs. I mean, like, they say in the book briefly, you know, he did all right and why he did all right or whatever. And, like, apparently in the 50s, America was rich and that's why he was fine or whatever. But, you know, he might have related a little bit about, like, yeah, you know, when he's on the farm milking cows or whatever, it's not really helping stimulate his mind in a way that his mind works.
Yeah. And it would have been interesting to see them maybe go into that a little bit more instead of talking about how he was nurtured during his childhood and that whole thing where America was rich then and we were pouring money into special gifted programs because we wanted to, you know, to excel. We needed to beat the Russians. And then once that stopped, it all went to shit. But it would have been nice to see there are still seams that are going to show. Like you said, Allison, if he's out there in that field milking a freaking cow, he must be bored off his ass. He must just be out of his mind with what am I doing here?
Yeah. I feel like it would just be hard to, like, find things to keep his brain going just by virtue of, like, where they were and what the time period was and all that stuff. Like, I don't know. I just feel like it maybe would have related a little to the situation.
Yeah, I had not thought of that. Thank you for bringing that up. That is a great missed opportunity of this book because you have kids of Sam's ilk who he can relate to like he can relate to nobody else, really, when you think about it. And they kind of ignore or write that entire thread away because I guess it's not something that Barbara was interested in exploring.
Yeah.
And I mean, Al's explanation, I feel like, was more Barbara getting on a soapbox, talking about what was wrong with education in the 80s, I guess, when she was going to school. I feel like that's where the book like veered into preaching a little bit.
That felt like dialogue in the show, though. They would do that quite often on the show.
I mean, I don't know. Felt like when he talks about the environment or something on the show. So yeah, it's in keeping with the show, but it's part of what took me out of the story.
He's putting things in historical context, I think, as well.
Yeah, it just seemed to me to be like, okay, this is the really important message that we need to get through, and we're going to do it as an uncharacteristic data dump from Al in one scene.
I don't know. I mean,
and then get on with that.
Should they have written a scene where all the characters stare at the camera and they have an inspirational narration about it? Or
that's a way to go too.
Would that have been too much?
A little bit. I mean, either way, PSA is a PSA. If it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, it's a duck, baby. So the fact that it took me out of the book, I think, says it all. For me, anyway. I don't know if you guys even noticed or picked up on that or even cared if you did, but...
I thought it was fine.
Yeah.
Oh, I like that Sam was scared of going to the principal's office because he'd never been sent to the principal's office before.
There's plenty of cute Sam and Al stuff in here. But yeah, I love that bit.
And there's also lots of great references to just little things from stuff throughout the show. Like even just like seeing I think it was a sticker or a poster for King Thunder. Like, that was great.
Yeah.
There are a lot of little things. And I did like that thing with Sam going to the principal's office and it being just like this scary thing for him. It reminded me of a throwaway line in Jimmy when he's going to talk to the guy about getting a job. And, you know, I was worried because Jimmy had never been on a job interview, but then I remembered neither have I.
I love when they throw things in like that because it's just like, you'd think like, what guy that age has never been to a job interview, and it's like, oh, of course he's never been to a job interview. It's like all the things that he knows versus all the things that he should know but doesn't know. It's just interesting. I mean, I guess not every kid's been sent to the principal's office, but it's very funny that a man in his like 40s, however old Sam is at this point, is just like, oh no, I've been sent to the principal's office. I mean, like by the time he was this age, I mean, I guess he was still in high school, but he was like, you know, by 16 he was in college. So I mean, he never really had to deal with any of that kind of stuff.
No, and I have to think that by the time he graduated, he was sought after. You know, he had his pick of where he wanted to work based on who was courting him because he's a genius.
Well, I don't know, because he his first big break was Starbright, right? Like when Al helped him get that job. So I always kind of wondered about that. Like Sam didn't seem to have anything like that going on before then, but I don't know.
I think they see, and I would say it's his big break because that's the project that he chose, and it sort of helped put him on the map. But I think he would have had his pick of any number of a dozen fellowships or think tanks or other projects that were eager to have his brain. That's just my headcanon for it. So that's like that throwaway line in Jimmy actually did a lot to fill in who Sam was for me. So
sure.
There was some pretty good lore stuff in here, too. I mean, the chief thing that I picked up on that we'd never heard before was that Sean is in the waiting room and he's saying that he's feeling like electrical impulses in his brain or something like that.
Yeah, but I thought maybe he was just wondering if he felt that or like making it up. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if that was supposed to be a solid thing that was happening.
Yeah.
Or if he was just trying to get information.
He said that he was feeling shocks from leaping. So residual shocks. And he was wondering what it was, and he was having trouble sleeping. And they did explain it somewhat in the course of the story because Al talks to Sam about it, and I forget how they resolve it, but it was just an interesting thing. If he wasn't lying, then what does that mean? You know, because he said it's electrical, right? It's electrical. So, and when we see leaping...
Yeah, I think that was just his way of trying to get information.
Ah.
You think?
I think he was trying to manipulate them for, like, he's just like, it's electrical, right? You know, I think because he was smart enough to hotwire his way out of the waiting room, which no one else had been able to do. So he was a pretty smart kid. I think he was trying to get information.
But for him to call it electrical, and I guess in universe, we have Al knows what a leap looks like and Al doesn't know what a leap looks like, right? But it's distinctly electrical for all of us watching, right? It's this surge of blue energy that is tingling and electrical and flying off like lightning. And it would be an odd choice for him to say it's electrical, right? Unless there was some, even if it's just subconscious on his part, there was some memory of the process. That's the way I read that. We didn't get anything this time about like the leap void or any of that stuff. Yeah. So there was no like them passing in the void, which I think would have been interesting. But hey, that's just me. I'll write that into my next Quantum Leap story if I do. I just thought it was thought it was an intriguing twist for him to say that. I feel like even if he doesn't know it, even if he is being manipulative, and he could be, there's still maybe a kernel of truth there, even if he doesn't realize it. So I just thought it was a nice touch. A nice touch.
Can you guys tell me what the explanation was for his anxiety dream that involved Al being this, like, Cyclops or something?
Nope.
Isn't that where your book cut off?
Yeah, my book, I didn't have those pages, so what was the explanation?
I have thoughts on this, Matt. What about you?
Yeah, I didn't. I mean, I have those pages, but I didn't see a deeper meaning.
Oh, okay.
Well, please go right ahead.
Yeah, what was it? What's the deal?
So, I mean, the book is called Odyssey, right? If you're familiar with the Odyssey, Odysseus lands on the Cyclops' island, and the Cyclops tries to kill them. So, I mean, so the Cyclops is the bad guy and figures prominently, even though comically, in the opening chapters of the book, right? And they're doing this whole thing about humor from Homer is what the Olympics of the Mind competition is about, right? So they're doing this whole Odyssey pastiche. So Sean has the Odyssey on his mind, and I guess the main villain being the Cyclops, Sean is having this anxiety because he's getting close to Al. And he doesn't want to trust anybody
because he's projecting his father onto Al.
Exactly, and he doesn't trust anybody at all. Not just his dad, but the therapists, and his mom's an alcoholic, and he just feels like everybody's manipulating him and trying to quote fix him without even really getting to know him if they don't just abandon him altogether. So the fact that he's getting closer to Al, it's making him subconsciously very worried that he's going to give Al his trust and Al is going to betray him. And that's why Al takes on the Cyclops in the dream, because the Cyclops is the bad guy that tries to kill you and eat you. And in the dream, I think Al eats Tina, right? So That's weird. 11-year-old Tina.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's I think that's what he's worried about. He's worried about being vulnerable. That's another thing that I think was a great theme of this book, and it jives, of course, with that YA angst. It's just fear of vulnerability. And you get a lot of that from Sarah, too. There was one wacky scene. It's the first time we see Sarah home alone, because they had this chapter with little vignettes of all their home lives. And Sarah's like sitting on her bed, like almost having a panic attack and saying that she's tumbling in some empty void. Like, so Sarah's got some real major issues here. And then we never pick up on that. But it's just like, she's obviously feeling the most vulnerable of all. She's the lone wolf. She doesn't want to get close to anybody. And that, again, that's a theme that they pick up. I think that's more of where it strays into young adult territory, though. And I think that the resolution of the book was having at least some resolution to these feelings, having the characters become a little bit more confident. The only ones that we don't really get that with are Pigeon and Johnny, because, you know, they're just like the dude bros. Even though they're the nerdy dude bros, you know, they're comic relief most of the time, right? And, or the sage advice from Pigeon or whatever. I mean, he was like the Eddie character to me. We're going to go straight on It. I mean, he was Eddie from It. And, I feel like the Tina and the Sarah stuff were much more fleshed out in this aspect of being vulnerable, of choosing to let go of vulnerability and to become a new person. And maybe it's because Barbara is a woman, and maybe, you know, she's remembering her experiences as a young woman, and she's able to better extrapolate all of that stuff onto the female characters, which I appreciate.
Yeah, it's possible. I mean, she did flesh out Sean just as well. But yeah, I mean, I guess like there was a little bit more about the girls on the Leap end.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, for all that, I thought that Sean was still super interesting. I liked the way that she gave him an analytical mind. He finds himself apparently flung into the future and doesn't panic about it. He's just sitting on the little table in the waiting room and, you know, going over his options, like really methodically laying out, okay, if this is the reality, then this, and then this. And I found that very engaging to begin with, because it wasn't just another thing where, the Leapee is catatonic and we need to drug him, and no, Sam's in trouble, and it's
yeah. This is, I think, the most interested I've been in the stuff back at home in one of these books, because I felt like the stuff that happened there was interesting enough to fill the time spent on it.
For sure.
And it, you know, all the stuff with Sean and Al was interesting to me. I thought there was lots of little details added to the other characters that I thought was interesting too. Like, I like that Verbena was going on a date with Eddie from accounting.
Eddie from accounting.
Eddie from accounting. And I'm like, what's Verbena's date life like? I mean, I like that it, you know, they were giving a little bit more to her.
Yeah.
I like that they talked a bit about Gushy. He's got like a vacation cottage in Calgary.
Mm-hmm. No, that was Beeks. I believe that was Beeks.
Beeks does? I thought Gushy did. I wrote down Gushy.
I thought, all right, well, I could be remembering wrong. I was reading quickly an hour ago.
Someone has a vacation cottage
in Calgary, yeah. But maybe it's Gushy and Beeks. Maybe they do a timeshare together. I don't know.
Oh, you think Gushy and Beeks are also dating?
Oh, Gushy's dating everyone.
Gushy's dating everyone. They talk about his bad breath, but he's with everyone.
Gushy's got game, man.
Gushy's got game, except for with Sammy Joe. He's creeped out by her.
I love that. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Okay, is this the first instance of Sammy Joe being in one of the books?
I made a note of that as well and thought it can't be, but all right, if you thought that as well, then
I feel it is.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting in this version of Quantum Leap. Everyone at the project remembers when Sammy Joe just first appeared. And apparently, that memory is going to...
Not everyone. Beeks specifically
everyone
said...
who was in the room.
Everyone who was in the room. And Gushy says, weren't we supposed to forget about this by now? And I thought it was very telling. And Beeks said, yeah, I guess it'll happen eventually. I thought it was very telling that nobody seemed to remember Donna just appearing at some point after Starcrossed, right? So I guess eventually, even if they were in the room, they probably forgot about it. And the only one who still remembers is Al, given the structure of the time travel and the changes at the project that we've seen in the book so far. So I feel like Barbara kind of took that and made it her own in kind of a neat way. I just wish that we had gotten more than one scene with Sammy Jo actually speaking, because the fact that Gushy is completely freaked out by her, I think is gold. I think that's great.
Yeah, it was interesting. I kind of wanted to know a little more if it had relevant things happening. Like, I don't want just a bunch of scenes with Sammy Jo that have nothing to do with anything. But yeah, I would have liked a little more there. There's this whole running bit too with these like 3 engineers, I think, who are brought in Tina's stead while she's on vacation, and they're like arguing with each other and annoying everyone. And then that sort of dropped and then isn't brought up again after a while. I don't know, maybe it was just meant to be like some flavor, some things happening there.
Okay, so behind the scenes, and I'm not saying this is that, but what I'm saying is there's a character in my book, a very specific character, who's named because she won the right to be named. I think they auctioned it off as part of charity, where you could be written into a Quantum Leap book.
Oh.
At the East Leaps. I think that was part of like the charity auction. There's a character in my book, Allison Pregler, and she's a real girl. And I spoke to her, and she was a great kid. At that, she's probably like 30 now, but at the time she was about 15, and she was terrific. And I wrote her into the story in a big way. Everyone was really surprised, and I said, "Well, I need a character here, so why not use her?" And I think that maybe these are people, or at least one of them, or they're just friends of Barbara's who she wanted to put into the story.
Maybe that seems more likely, because it's not the most flattering depiction if it was someone who like won the right to be named. But
yeah, but I mean, my whole joke, and I guess we'll talk about this in 6 years when we do foreknowledge, was like, why have a character that...
Hey, we're close. We're close to foreknowledge.
We're 6 books away? We're not going to get to it before the new season of QL 2022, or in this case, 2023.
Yeah, but we did the novel a year or so ago.
But my point is, why would you want to have a character that says, "Hey, do you want fries with that?" just because they want to walk on?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Make it into a character. If there's a character in a book, it should have a reason. It's like a Chekhov's gun,
Sure. I just, I don't know. It just felt like the characters were in like the first half of the book and then stopped doing anything. So it was just kind of weird.
Yeah.
And actually, I was glad that they dropped it, because it seemed like it would be annoying. That, to me, would have been tedious. What is this, measure of a man? We got to discuss whether or not Ziggy is alive,
Yeah,
right?
well, yeah, it was kind of pointless. Those guys and the Sammy Jo thing, like, didn't ultimately go anywhere. But I guess, I mean, on the flip side, it's better than, like, the project just seeming like it has nothing going on. Like, I'd rather it seems like there's, like, a little bit of life there. Everyone's got some sort of little detail going on. They even throw in that Tina was Pulse Communications until Al promoted her. So we also learn a little bit about why her job changed.
Mm-hmm.
And they also referred back to Prelude in here, if I'm not mistaken, because they talk about Al hiring Tina or picking her up from Vegas.
Right. Yeah, that was a Prelude thing.
Yeah, where they met her in Vegas and she became the architect.
I think actually there's in what the stupid cowboy one, How the Test Was Won. Wasn't there also about meeting Tina in Vegas in that one?
Yeah, that definitely came up there.
I don't know if that was where we hired her, or is he just meeting her in Vegas because he's got a hot date with her? I don't remember the context of the story.
I think he just said that's how they met. I think he said they met in Vegas in that episode.
Gotcha. So you're saying that Ashley then ran with that and made it more of an official meeting with her as a potential employee, as opposed to, she was just at the craps table.
Yeah, I think in Prelude they met at the party in Prelude, at the Christmas party. So that Prelude changed what it was.
Yeah, much different connotation in the sense that even if it was in Vegas, if the party was in Vegas, it was still a professional thing, where in my mind, when Tess was on and he says, I met Tina in Vegas, he was just on a trip to Vegas and she happened to be too. And they met at a bar or at the craps table or something like that. But it was just a random thing.
Right.
So makes much more sense the way Ashley does it, because why would Tina come back to the project otherwise? Oh, I just met her in Vegas, so let's make her Pulse Technician.
Because they're the most unprofessional project in the universe. They just do whatever. You saw Alan the pilot taking the other Tina just straight there. Nobody cares.
They're all too busy having sex and stealing money.
Xeroxing their butts or whatever.
Xeroxing their butts.
I wonder if Beaks and or Gushy got their joint Calvary Cottage from all those extra zeros that Ziggy put on their paycheck.
It all ties together.
Verbena and Gushy is the rarest of pairs.
Is there a ship name for Verbena and Gushy?
No, I'm saying that's in the fanfic community. You call it a rare pair. You know, if it's one that has like nobody ships it kind of thing. It's just so I doubt there's ever been anyone who's written a Gushy Verbena fanfic. But if they have, it's maybe like one story.
Would it be like Gubina? Hashtag Gubina.
Bishi?
I like Gubina. It sounds Italian. Gubina. Hey, Gubina.
Gubina.
It's my Gubina. It's like my Guma. Gubina.
I'm all over that.
That would be hilarious. Oh, challenge accepted. We should write some.
I'm kind of interested in the idea of these two together. It just seems very unlikely.
So all of you creative listeners out there, P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York, 11705, send us your Gushy and Verbena fanfic, /fic, shipfic.
Yeah, they're at their vacation house and then they get snowed in and they're
Calgary.
stuck there.
Ooh,
In
sexy.
Oh, you
okay,
guys.
going back to the book, I do have a few more notes. Is this the first time, canonically, they've said that Sam helped Al to dry out?
Well, I mean, define canonically.
Well, I mean, like, have they alluded to it anywhere, or we just kind of assumed that? Because I'm not sure if they ever really said, like, you know, specifically that Sam helped him dry out. I mean, I guess Sam didn't go out to do it, but Al credits him for it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess a lot of us kind of read that into the conversations in Play Ball, but I never thought about it, but it's not really specifically said until now.
I mean, it's just sort of, I mean, I feel like a lot of people assume that, and I've certainly read, like, fanfics that say it, but I'm like, in canon, has it ever really been stated? I'm not sure they ever really say that Al did dry out. I mean, I guess you can infer that, but, I mean, he seems to have some relapses occasionally.
He has his moments, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, right in the pilot, he's got a relapse. I feel like he's got a relapse in, was it Seymour? Well, anyway, Sam accused him of being a drunken Seymour.
Yeah. Sam hurt his feelings by saying he thought with the bottle in that one. But yeah, I just thought it was kind of interesting because I don't know if or when this was outright stated anywhere. So
it hasn't been before now.
All right, so yet another thing that Barbara helped cement, I guess.
Yeah, there you go.
And I wonder if that was, you know, she was just picking up on the accepted lore, right, of the fan community. We discussed that last episode with Disco Inferno. So the accepted excuse for Disco Inferno not being on streaming services was because music right issues. We have no idea if that's true.
Well, it's not really a lore thing.
Yeah. But what I'm saying, it's there are certain things that go on in the fan community that people just take as given, right? So sure. I think there's been a mythology built around Al and Sam and Al's alcoholism. And I feel like that's an established sort of behind the scenes fact that fans just accept. I don't know that it's ever been specifically on screen, and I don't know if this book helped to cement that or if this book is just capitalizing on something that fans had already theorized about. Kind of like Uhura's first name. It's now canon, but Nyota was just a part of the books. I think Sulu's first name too, Hikaru Sulu, was
they
just
really
in the
never
books.
Say their first names on the show or the movies?
No.
Never. Just Chekhov. For whatever reason, Chekhov is the only one with a first name.
That's so weird.
Hikaru was canonized in Undiscovered Country, but it took that long.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And Nyota, I think, was canonized in the JJ verse.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Isn't it cool, though, when stuff like that becomes canon? You know, like it's like fans just accept it as the truth and then finally it's confirmed in something?
What, you mean like when Janice Calavici pops up in some slash fiction and then the producers of the new series go, yep, that's the name we're going to use?
If that's really what that was from, the person who wrote that is like a shit in bricks somewhere. Like,
So, yeah, I mean, so I guess
so
it happens.
funny.
So, but it's good because it not only does it, if you're not familiar with those things, right, with whatever we're talking about here, if you're not familiar with those little niche fan theories, to read it in a book, you become invested in it. You're just like, oh, that's a neat way to look at it. And if you are invested in those things, it cements what you think you already know. So it's a win-win for a writer either way, right?
Yeah.
Right. I thought there was the kind of cool part, too, where Sam is dealing with Sean's drunken mother, and he's getting kind of upset about it and saying some harsh things about her. And Al says, like, well, I'm glad that you have that kind of judgment on me. And he says, like, well, I didn't need you to be my father. And Al seems really upset that he says that. Like, it hurt his feelings that he was saying he didn't want him to be his father, almost. Like, I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that says more about Al than it says about Sam.
Maybe Al is seeing him as sort of a son to him. Maybe more of that, he's thinking about Nate some more, and that's just on his mind. I don't know.
Yeah, and I feel like that reveals that Al, no matter what, they're always best friends, but there's also a paternal aspect to the way he feels about Sam. And Sam basically said, I don't need you for that. And even Al says he has his own dad, like he gets it. But this could also be like, I was thinking now that we talked about Seymour and that cut down that Sam does of Al, where I don't get my judgment from the bottom of a bottle, to tell your story walking, basically, he says. Mm-hmm. Had Sam not been Swiss cheese and remembered his relationship with Al, even though it wasn't really that established on the show at this point, I don't think he ever would have said that. That's Swiss cheese, Sam talking, maybe remembering some things about Al out of context without the full weight of the true relationship and bond they share. Otherwise, he wouldn't say that. And maybe that's something like that going on here, too. Or maybe Sam is just so distracted by what's going on with the woman that he's got to dry out.
He does seem to throw it out a bit carelessly and then realize that he's done so and apologize to him. So yeah. I think he does he just wasn't thinking when he threw that out there.
And maybe it's such a subtle thing because Barbara says something to the effect that because they're trying to dry the mom out, right? And
right.
They have this yawning day ahead of them where she can't drink and he has to supervise her and they're working on it together, but he doesn't know what the hell to say to her. And he says something to the effect of debates about science or engineering or music. Let's do it. Like long, detailed debates, but he was never any good at small talk. And I feel like maybe that's part of him being sort of a genius in the sense that he can't relate to people very well, even though he does. He's Sam. He's magic. He can do anything and he can turn anybody around. But I think it's a much more realistic take on a character who is someone of his IQ not being able to relate very easily to more mundane things. And maybe this is a byproduct of that. Maybe he can get snappy and careless because he's above it all.
Yeah, I think he just gets caught up in his own brain sometimes.
Yeah. That's a much more succinct way of saying it, Allison. Thank you. But you know me, why use 3 words when I could use 30?
It's the writer in you.
Yeah, I've always kind of headcanoned that about Sam, though, that, like, Leaping really taught him about how to relate to people. I feel like is someone who is that much of a genius would have trouble relating to people because he's just so much smarter than, like, the people his age, and then he's around a bunch of adults, and then, like, he's smarter than them. Like, how do you relate to that,
Yeah. The other reason that Nate might have died, honestly, is there was, like, certain caveats when I tried to write for Star Trek. They said, like, you can't add, like, a captain to the Enterprise that has never been a captain to the Enterprise.
Oh, yeah.
You can't kill off Sam. Because in my first draft of Foreknowledge, Sam dies. Spoiler, we'll talk about that too. But they said, no, you can't do that. I think John Peel came up against that as well. You can't kill Sam. So it might be if you want to add like permanent family, you have to take them away by the end of the book. So it might have been like she wanted to do that, have Al have a stepson, but the powers that be said, nope, can't do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. That seems likely.
Yeah.
It would have been great, maybe they were estranged or maybe they were at odds. It would have been a great little coda to the book for Al to go and seek Nate out. to reawaken that part of his life now that he is invested in it again, or now that he's come to terms with it.
Now that he knows it's been written into his character.
Right. I mean, there is that. But isn't that true of every episode, every book, every piece of fiction ever with ongoing characters?
Matt, I wanted to ask you about this, because I know you're a stickler for this kind of detail. How's the timeline work in this book, as far as... Does it add up?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's... The stuff about Al's wives is always a bit tricky. He does a lot in a short space of time. Because we don't know much about Tina, that all fits in okay. There's one moment within the book where Sarah's death changes year within a few pages of each other, but that's by the by.
I mean, they mention Al and Sam's ages in this book, but it doesn't add up. Like, Al's 60, which would place this in around 1994, because he was born in 34, I believe, was Al's birthday.
Yeah, I didn't pick up.
Yeah, they said he was 60.
Yeah, he says he's 60. They say Sam's 40, so it would be 93, 94. But the stuff with Dr. Ruth and Sammy Joe would place it in season 5. And Sam says it's 99 and 2000, so...
Yeah, which is also fine. But I didn't notice the mention of their ages. Yeah, that's clearly off. You're right.
You know, Allison, I noticed that too. I don't really know Al's age. It's always nebulous to me, but if he would have been, then 64 at that point, 60, 65, given his date of birth. And when he said he was looking at a 40-year-old man, I kind of just thought he meant like a guy in his 40s. That's how I logicked my way around that, because even I know he's older than 40. So,
yeah.
Right. Just didn't add up.
Does not add up. Barbara, you have some explaining to do.
Which is really odd when she's got some pretty obscure stuff that she's thrown in there, and she's obviously a fan. There's some well-researched stuff, so that's quite incongruous.
Oh, yeah. I think it's near impossible for anyone to remember every detail about Quantum Leap, and even if you do, there's so much contradictory information anyway. She was probably just going with what the actors' ages were. Like, you don't think about the fact that there's this shift in the times that it took place a little bit in the future and all that, so...
True.
That's probably what happened. I find it interesting, so I'm just pointing out things.
Yeah. There is the suggestion this episode takes, I know you said 99, 2000, but when Al talks about Nate's age, it's very clear that this is set in the year 2000, because Nate was born in 79 and would be 21 by now.
Okay.
But there's numerous other bits of evidence, some of which hasn't come up yet, but some of it has already been in the show, that we are still in 1999.
Right. Well, we know in the show, canonically, it was 99 around then.
Yeah. Mirror's Edge will firmly establish that the show ended in 99, but that's not happened yet.
I don't know if Mirror's Edge firmly establishes anything, not in this little heart of hearts of mine. So we will have that discussion.
Okay. I look forward to talking about that.
It's an entirely different discussion, my friends, but we're not talking about Mirror's Edge. We're talking about Odyssey. Do you guys have any last notes on Odyssey that we haven't brought up?
I was just skimming through my notes now, and one of them made me go and add some PopTarts to my next shopping delivery, because I've not had PopTarts in years.
I have not had a PopTart since my senior year of high school, so you're right on that score, sir.
Yeah, same. But Chrissy lives on them, so I'm going to try some PopTarts later this week and see if they live up to my memory. Demons and Dragons as well. Demons and Dragons reference.
Oh yeah, Demons and Dragons. I do like with the Pop-Tarts thing that, like, Sam doesn't like that it's not nutritious, and then Al's like, no, it's great. It's like, oh, lots of good stuff. Well, it's got fruit in it.
Yeah.
What I love is Sam is such a stickler that it's not nutritious, but then he drops the freaking Pop-Tart on the floor, and then he picks it up and eats it anyway. That was gross.
Yeah.
Sam, you grosso. You and your salmon and coffee or whatever.
And he was just talking about how the kitchen is dirty and he wanted to wash the floor, but he didn't want to disturb the mother any more than he already had. And it wasn't even like the 3-second rule, man. That doesn't exist. You're a scientist. You know better.
Good old floor Pop-Tart Sam Beckett. That's going to follow him forever. We're going to read other books and be like, yeah, but he eats Pop-Tarts off the floor. And then has gross mayo sex scenes and stuff.
And then goes out for a heaping helping of salmon with a cup of coffee.
Yeah. Weirdo Sam. Yeah, I had a couple things that I wrote down. First of all, I like that Al plays Atari with Sean. Just because I like imagining Al playing Atari. It's very good.
To me, that's very realistic because Atari was just one joystick and one button. Even I can play Atari. Anybody can play Atari. It's not like these days with the 9 billion buttons on these controllers.
Yeah.
That old man rant over. Go ahead, Allison.
Yeah, the last thing. When I read the acknowledgments, I knew I instantly liked Barbara Walton because she thanked a Quantum Leap Usenet group.
Yeah,
that's where she's like, I got all my info from them. If they didn't, it's not because they didn't know anything. If I missed anything, it's because I didn't ask them. They were great. I just love that. This was when the internet was still pretty early, and that was how people would get together. And the fact that a bunch of Quantum Leap fans got together on Usenet, and she's like, hey, I'm writing a book. Can you help me out? And they're like, oh, hell yeah. They probably gave her, they're like, you put Demons and Dragons in there. Put King Thunder. That'd be great. Just a great coming together.
Yeah, I was not computer savvy. I had no idea that stuff existed. It would have been a great help when I was trying to do research for my own book. But, what are you going to do?
You did fine.
I just knew specific people that I could bother who had the videotapes. So...
we haven't really touched on because we focused earlier on about the twist at the end. That kind of, for me, that was overshadowed by the, not quite twist, but they've never really done this before. The whole thing of Sam being instructed to hold on to the leaflet as he's leaping out so that he can effectively pass a message forward to the Leapee. I love that. That was really cool.
Yeah, he's holding a Navy flyer.
Yeah. Which I that was really cool and unique. And you see Sam always trying to change the Leapee's future by changing everyone around him. This is actually giving Sean some agency to hopefully change things for himself by reminding him somewhat of the discussions that he's had with Al. So, yeah, I really like that.
I enjoyed that too, and that gave rise to that that typo in the box tree edition that I think I discussed on an earlier show, because he said if only he could leave something behind, some small reminder, and it turns out to be that Navy poster. But I think in the box tree edition it said some small reindeer.
What?
He could leave some small reindeer.
Yeah, so I know I've already discussed this on this show before, but it's apropos now. We're talking about the book, all right? So if I'm repeating myself, I'm sorry.
I forgot about that one. It's just delightful. It's just delightful. I love it.
I got a whole list of typos from the box tree version. I didn't pick up on that one. There's like Verbena Banks. There's a sphygmomanometer, which, to be fair, I'm not surprised that was misspelt. But yeah, I missed the reindeer.
That's so good.
This was one of the more unfortunate books for box tree errors. So that does not surprise me at all.
Yeah, and my one last bit of notes is I really like Barbara's pop culture references in this because it was all the shit that I watched when I was that age. She talks about Chrissy watching The Dukes, and everybody's watching Voyagers on Sunday night. I loved Voyagers. I thought it was the greatest show. But she also brings up some good books. She Lord of the Flies, and she brings up Narnia. She brings up Huck Finn. So we have some of the same reading tastes, Barbara and I. So
I definitely had to read Lord of the Flies for school and watch a few filmed versions.
Yeah. I mean, it's a classic for a reason, I guess. It shows you just that if you want hope for the future, that book ain't it.
Yeah, I just remember watching a filmed version where it's like they had the famous scene with Piggy where he dies. Spoilers, Piggy dies in Lord of the Flies.
He gets squished good.
He gets squished and there's just a paper mache head. It's so funny to me.
I feel like if you're spoiling that, it's like saying, oh, by the way, Sam Beckett never returned home. It's, Lord of the Flies is even older.
If you can't be mad about being spoiled on Lord of the Flies.
Exactly.
You probably had to read it for school.
Exactly. If you didn't read it in 7th grade, that's on you. You didn't do the assignments.
I never read it.
Oh,
Well, Piggy
Matt.
dies.
Yeah, Piggy dies.
Piggy is the Porkins of the story.
Well, now I'll never bother to read it. Thank you, Allison.
Sucks to your specs, Matt. Sucks to your asthma and sucks to your auntie. Does anyone have any final thoughts on Odyssey by Barbara Walton? Allison?
If I sound like I was down on it, there were certainly parts I wasn't paying too much attention to. I don't want to make it seem like I didn't like the book, because I did like how the characters were written. I thought it was a solidly okay story. And I think there was some good stuff in it that I really enjoyed. I liked how the characters talked. Just the story itself, for me, didn't grab me very much.
Matthew Dale?
Yeah, and very similarly for me, I think I probably sounded quite down on it in the opening thoughts. It's not my kind of story, but it's well written. It was a breeze to read, and the stuff at the project, the stuff with Alan Shawn is just fantastic. So it's worthwhile. It's got some good bits in it. It's just happens not to be my kind of thing.
All right. And the fact that it's not like your kind of thing or the kind of story that we're used to seeing in Quantum Leap, I think, or anyway in the books so far, is something that really made me enjoy it more, because it wasn't just another family drama. It wasn't just another Leap I didn't give a crap about. I really got to like the kids. I really got to like the Leap story more than I've liked the Leap story, I think, in any of the books so far. So it's got, bonus for that for me. And on top of that, Barbara knows Sam, and she knows Al, and she knows the universe, and she writes in it very well. Like, she is comfortable. She is swimming in a warm pool here. She's playing to her strengths, and clearly she is, formidable when it comes to her Quantum Leap knowledge. And I think she applies it very well. It's never heavy-handed. It all seems organic. And yeah, I think it's one of the more enjoyable books in the series, because it's both deep and light and funny, and I think the best balance of the books we've read so far. So I really enjoyed it, and I would recommend anybody to read this one. I think if you have not read any of the novels, this would be as good a starting place as any, even though they reference the McConnell verse. So, but very slight references to the McConnell verse. So good job, Barbara. And I'm happy that we got to talk about this one, because I did not remember it fondly. I remembered it, it's the school kids book, I don't want to read this. And I was like, I'm so glad I reread this. It was really good. So,
good.
So if you have read it and you don't remember it, well, give it another chance. But I say this is so far one of the top of the range for me personally. So, all right, I think that closes the book on our discussion of Odyssey by Barbara Walton. And this is usually the point where I throw to a break or throw to feedback or throw to new Patreon subscriber or something, but we really don't have anything this time. So that being said, write us. Tell us what you think about Odyssey, about any of the other novels. If you want to do so, there are many ways that you can reach us here at the Quantum Leap Podcast. You can drop us a line at P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York, 11705. Remember that verbena, gushy, Gubina /fiction. We need that. Call us on the phone.
It wouldn't be slash. It's not.
Oh, I'm sorry. I don't know.
Oh, I want slash.
I don't know the lingo.
I think slash is just same sex, right?
Oh, is it?
Slash fiction is when it's a same sex relationship.
Oh, I thought it could be either. All right.
Okay, so if you do have slash fiction, I'd be interested in one or the other characters' backgrounds that we didn't know about.
Gushy Al fan fiction.
Yes.
Any fan fiction would be appreciated. I want to see that P.O. Box bursting with any and all fan fiction, slash or otherwise. You can also reach us by phone at 707-847-6682. You can email us at quantumleappodcast@gmail.com. You can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/quantumleappodcast. You can hit us up on Twitter at quantumleappod, on Instagram at quantumleappodcast, and you can watch all of our videos on YouTube at youtube.com/the Quantum Leap Podcast. Remember, you can always go that extra mile as well and support us on Patreon at patreon.com/Quantum Leap Podcast. Just remember, we may use your response on an upcoming episode of the Quantum Leap Podcast. And speaking of upcoming episodes, Matt, tell us what's next.
Well, next we're going to be returning to our revisited range of Season 2 episodes with the Americanization of Machiko.
Oh my God. I'm Popeye.
So I guess Sam's Popeye, huh?
We're ready for some baseball.
Yeah, I mean, listen, I put out the poll for Choose Our Next Sleep, like I do every time, and fan favorite Thou Shalt Not was still a strong second. So we might be skipping the order.
We're getting close, though. We're getting close.
Actually, Machiko nosed out Thou Shalt Not much more than Disco Inferno did. I really think Disco Inferno won by 1 vote. So... So I guess Machiko is more of a fan favorite episode based on, you know, the 30 or so people that vote on Patreon anyway.
Isn't that the episode that the guys on Fate's Wide Wheel don't like?
Yeah, I can't remember why not.
I don't listen to the other podcasts, not because I don't like them. I just never want to be influenced. Everybody that talks about Quantum Leap does so better than I do. So if I listen to other shows, I am invariably going to parrot some shit that they say because it's so smart and funny, and I don't want to put myself in that position. That's the only reason I don't listen to them. So Sam and Dennis have a problem with Machiko, huh?
Yeah, I cannot remember why, but definitely.
Maybe because they don't like the Japanese because they had to fight them in World War II, right?
No, that's probably it. It's probably it.
Gotta be.
Brings back too many memories.
Sam Dennis, P.O. Box 542, Bayport, New York 11705. Send your manifesto against Machiko there, please. We will read it on a Patreon bonus show one of these days.
Yeah, it'll just be the beginning of the podcast is just like shuffling as you're unrolling the scroll that they've sent.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I'm looking forward to Machiko. Spoiler alert, I remember quite enjoying the episode, so I look forward to revisiting it. I haven't seen it in many years, so I'd like to see what you guys think of it. I have one specific question, Matt, that I can't wait to ask you, but it will have to wait until next time. So everybody on the edge of your seat with bated breath, but...
I will be.
So you keep that thought, hold that thought. Until next time, I have been Christopher DeFilippis.
I've been Allison Pregler.
And I've been Matt Dale.
And we'll see you next time.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of the Quantum Leap podcast, hosted by Allison, Matt, and Chris, with voice talent and contributions from Hayden McQueenie and Zoe Dean. To support the show, please go to patreon.com/Quantum Leap podcast. The executive producer of the Quantum Leap podcast is Albert Burge. Christopher DeFilippis and Hayden McQueenie are the co-executive producers. Special thanks to our producers, Harold Sullivan, Glenda Palma, Chris, aka Brackmang, Mike Covert, Jeff Kiska, Craig Riedler, Cosplay Dad, Charles Allen Gossard, and Morgan Felden. The thoughts expressed on this podcast are those of the individual and do not necessarily represent those of the Quantum Leap podcast, its partners, or affiliates. The Quantum Leap universe and all it contains is the property of Belisarius Productions and Universal Television. The Quantum Leap podcast is not affiliated with Belisarius Productions or Universal Television, and no copyright infringement is intended. The Quantum Leap podcast is a Barren Space production.
Surely you could do the audio version of your book.
Yes, I'll just start reading aloud into my microphone. I'll do all the voices. I'll even try to do like British accents, which I'm really good at.
Yeah.
Are there British characters in your book?
I can make them British. Why not? It's my fucking book.
Oh, okay. All right. I mean, it's generally if it's a book written by an American and there's not characters sitting around having cups of tea with their pinky fingers stuck out, I assume they're American.
Are you ready, Matt? Here I go. Oh, bloody hell. Governor. Call blimey.
Wow.
All English people are Cockney.
I thought we'd got Malcolm McDowell on the line or something. That was amazing.
I thought I sounded very public school. I'm sorry. Oh, do tell, Governor. Okay, I'm wasting time. All right, let's get going. We gotta get my microphone voice on.
Oh, Elvis now. Elvis and Malcolm McDowell. We doing Memphis Melody again?
No, let's not.
Is this one of these books we really don't want to talk about, and that's why we've managed to waste 10 minutes already?
Buckle the fuck down, people. Okay.
All right, let's do it.
Welcome. See, now my voice gives out on me. Maybe the universe is telling us something. And in the dream, I think Al eats Tina, right? So that's weird.